Hey there folks, this is the video tutorial for the Untamed Heart made in the hoop of your embroidery machine. There are two different sizes. One is made in a 4" by 4" hoop, and the other one needs a 5" by 7" hoop for the body and limbs, while the mittens for that one are made in the 4" by 4". The smallest one made in the 4" by 4" hoop does not have the limbs and mittens. Those are just options for the 5" by 7" version. This video is organized into chapters so you can easily skip around and just watch the parts that apply to the project you're making. I've hooped some stabilizer in my 4" by 4" hoop and ran stitch 1, which is the placement, and we just go ahead and place our fabric right side up and run stitch 2, which is a tack down stitch. And then put a little bit of topper, either water soluble or heat soluble topper, on top of your fabric and go ahead and stitch all of the parts of the face. It will start with the whites of the eyes, then the teeth, then it does the eye border and the eye pupils, and finally it stitches the lips. Then after the face has been stitched, you go ahead and remove the water soluble or topper stabilizer, and then place the back fabric right side down on top and go ahead and run the last stitch, which is the seam. And there are holes in the seam to allow for the limbs to be placed in there, so don't worry about those missing little openings there, that's on purpose. And we take it out of the hoop and we're going to go ahead and cut out the heart. Be sure you get all the way in that little area at the top of the heart there. And now we're ready to turn it right side out. And you shouldn't need any special tools for this, you can just do it by hand. Once you've got it turned, go ahead and push out the top parts and the little corner at the bottom of the heart. Get all the seams pushed out nicely so it'll be nice and plump. I've got 2 chenille stems here, and I'm using the bumpy kind. You can use the regular pipe cleaner kind, and I'm just twisting them in the middle. These are 2 twisted together in the middle to make an X. And then I take one of them and run it through the armhole. This can be a little tricky to find the little holes in the seams. Just kind of feel around with your finger until you find it. So I pull one through for the arm, and then you go ahead and place another one through the leg hole on that side there. Same technique. And then just try to get that twisted part somewhere in the middle. So the top of the opening, you'll put the arm in the top of the opening and the leg goes on the bottom of the opening on the left side there. I like to go ahead and bend the chenille stem to make feet. This is optional, you don't have to do that, but I just take the bumpy thing, bend it right in the middle, and then give it a couple of twists, and then you got some little feet there. And then for the hands, I just bend the little edges over so they're not pointy and sticking out. Go ahead and stuff it as firmly or lightly as you want to. It doesn't take very much stuffing for these little guys. And then adjust the limbs and, pull them out to make the length whatever you want. And now this is kind of difficult with the felt. Faux fur is actually much easier, but go ahead and try to get the edges kind of pinched in and turned under, and then go ahead and glue or hand stitch that opening closed. I had a very ungraceful episode with my glue gun that I'm still getting used to using. That's why it's so messy there, but I did get it figured out. Just go ahead and make sure the arm is at the top. Tuck the excess fabric inside, and like I said, faux fur is much easier because it hides all of the messiness. But felt, not so forgiving. So keep that in mind when you're deciding which fabrics you want to use. Then just pinch that closed, same thing with the leg. Then over on the right side, you can go ahead and put just a spot of hot glue to close up those little openings too. And we've got the finished little Untamed Heart. Let's get a close-up look at him, down far away. He's done. Let's move on to 5 by 7. For the arms and legs, you go ahead and do the placement stitch on your stabilizer, and you put 2 pieces of fabric now right sides together. And make sure all those placement stitches are covered. Then you go ahead and just start stitching. There's no tack down stitch. It goes ahead and it stitches the outline of all 4 limbs double stitched, so it'll do it once and then reverse and do it a second time. And by the way, the arms and legs are the same. There's no difference between an arm and a leg, so there's just 4 limbs here. When we cut them out, I do suggest pinking shears if you're using a woven fabric. The distance between the limbs is very slight, very small, so pinking shears are better for making sure that you don't get too much unraveling there. And at the top, go ahead and cut right across right next to where the stitches end on the opening, and then just cut off the little corners at the bottom of the limb. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to turn these right side out. I'm using an easy point and turn here, and you just put it in there and scooch it over. You can see if you try to do it from the bottom, you get too much fabric bunched up. That's kind of not the right way that I'm showing, because you really should work from the top of where it's turning, not the bottom. It did work though, it's just more difficult than it should be. Whichever tool you use, I'll show you the correct method with the hemostats that I'm going to do next. And go ahead and press out the seams. With the hemostats, I reach all the way in and grab the toe area in the jaws of the hemostats. Just push it in there. And I'm doing it from the very top where it's turning. Go ahead and just put the pressure at the top and do about 1/4 inch at a time, and that will be much easier. Hemostats are also great for pushing out those seams, flattening it out. That's my preferred tool. I keep telling you how great they are. So all the limbs are turned right side out. For the body or the head, you could say it either way. I'm going to go ahead and do my placement stitch and cover it up with this piece of faux fur and do a tack down stitch that holds it in place. And then the next color is the eye applique placement. Cover those placement stitches with your eye applique fabric. I'm using some white knit jersey here. Any white fabric works. And then after those are tacked down, you go ahead and cut them out with some little applique scissors. And I do suggest when you're doing applique to do just a couple of snips and then turn your hoop. A couple more snips, turn the hoop. That's an easy way to do applique cutting. And get the fur out of the eyes before you put it back on the machine. Cover it up with some topper. I'm using some water-soluble topper here. And then go ahead and start stitching the face details. Your machine will start with the teeth, then it does the eye applique satin stitch around the eye border, that black circle you see there, then the eye pupils, and then finally the lips. And of course you don't need to write this down, it is all documented for you in your instructions document, which was part of your download. I like his face. Okay, the face is all finished stitching. Pull that topper off, it should tear away cleanly. And I'm making sure that the fur is pointing down just like on the back as it is on the front. Place it face down, make sure there's no curlies there, and then stitch the seams. And the seams do have several holes for the limbs and the turning opening, so don't worry, that is on purpose. Your machine will just stop or jump stitch around those openings. Then we just take it off of the hoop and cut away all of the excess fabric. Make sure that you clip all the way close to the stitches at the top there so it'll turn out very cleanly. And these are very easy to turn right side out. You can just use your hands. And then, boop, there's his fuzzy little face. That's the head and body for the Untamed Heart. I'm using tearaway stabilizer in my hoop for the mittens, and I'm putting 2 pieces of fabric. This is actually a fleece fabric because fleece is very good for making mittens. After the placement stitch, it just does the seams. And you get a pair of mittens in the 4x4 hoop. Something to note here, if you don't want to turn these right side out, you could do this felty style where you do the 2 layers of fabric just like that, but have it right sides out, and then go ahead and just run the seam and don't turn them inside out. Here I'm cutting away the excess fabric, and the stabilizer placement lines are a good area for cutting. You can just cut right on that seam and then tear away the stabilizer. Make sure you get in that little divot there between the thumb and the finger areas. After you do the inside stabilizer and tear that away, the outside edges should come off much easier. And again, hemostats are pretty necessary for turning that tiny little thumb and then getting the mitten turned right side out. Open that up a little bit. Perfect. There's one. Go ahead and do the second one. And the mittens are done. We've got all our parts. We're ready to put them together. Again, hemostats, I swear I don't have stock in a hemostat company. I just love it. It's my favorite tools. So I'm using it to poke it out through the hole and then pull one of the limbs into the body. I'm going to show you this example where I'm not using a wired armature because I know a lot of people don't want to do the wiring, so you don't have to. This is just no wires. But if you did want to put a wire armature inside and then you can just cover the wire with the fabric limbs, that works the same way. And when you put the limbs on that big opening, the leg goes at the very bottom of the opening and the arm goes at the very top. And I would suggest you just glue on one side, like the fur, one side of the fur glued to an arm and leg. Because if you do both front and back, then you won't have much of an opening to stuff it with. You could also stuff it first and then do the arm and leg on the left side there too. Either way works. It's time to put some stuffing in. You can stuff it as lightly or firmly as you like. This is your Untamed Heart. You do it however you want. I got a little spot there that needs a little bit more stuffing to fill out the head. Just poke that in there with my hands. No special tools needed for this. Now we're ready to close that final opening and just kind of pull those edges so that the fabric turns in on itself and run a bead of glue and then press that together and it is closed. And of course, let the glue dry or set. And for the mittens, you can just kind of wiggle the arms into the mittens, or if you really want to get them deep in there, again, hemostats, of course, just push it in there as far as you want it. And then finally, just a little dot of glue on the front and back of each mitten, and that'll hold the mittens in place. So that's the entire tutorial for the Untamed Heart in 2 different sizes. Feel free to visit ballyhoocreations.com for more tutorials on stuffing and turning dolls, as well as wired armatures and a lot of different quirky characters for the inspired sewist.